My name is Ethan, and this is the story of the worst night of my life. I've gone back and forth about whether to share it, but perhaps putting it into words will help me make sense of it all. It started like any other day, yet one moment turned everything upside down. The day began normally enough. My wife, Chloe, seemed unusually cheerful. She told me we had plans for a special evening on Saturday, as she called it, a surprise party hosted by one of her friends. Honestly, I didn't feel like going. Crowded parties aren't really my thing. But Chloe insisted, "You'll love it, trust me," with a smile. It was the kind of smile that once made me forget all my doubts. Now, though, it felt forced, as if something wasn't quite right. For the past few weeks, Chloe had been acting differently. She was glued to her phone, laughing at texts she never shared with me, and working late more often than usual. When I tried to bring it up, she dismissed my concerns, rolling her eyes as if I were imagining things. "Ethan, stop overthinking everything," she'd say. But my gut told me otherwise. Still, I pushed the thoughts aside. I wanted to trust her, even if something deep down told me I shouldn't. That Saturday, Chloe spent hours getting ready. She picked out a new dress, did her hair, and seemed almost nervous. I tried to make small talk, but she brushed me off with short answers. By the time we got into the car, the silence between us felt heavy. I told myself it was just my imagination. Maybe she really was just excited about the party. When we arrived, I immediately felt out of place. The house was massive, far more luxurious than I had expected for one of her friends. "They've done well for themselves," Chloe said casually when she saw my surprised expression. Her tone was dismissive, almost as if she was trying to shut down any questions before I could ask them. Inside, the party was already in full swing. Music blared from the speakers, and people filled every corner of the house, laughing, drinking, and chatting. Chloe disappeared into the crowd almost immediately, leaving me standing awkwardly by the entrance. She didn't introduce me to anyone or even look back. I grabbed a drink and tried to blend in, but I felt like a complete outsider. Hours seemed to pass. I barely saw Chloe, and when I did, she was always on the far side of the room, talking animatedly to groups of people I didn't know. Something about the way she moved, the way she avoided eye contact with me, made my stomach churn. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Eventually, I decided to look for her. I wandered through the house, checking the kitchen, the patio, even the game room in the basement. She was nowhere to be found. Frustrated, I headed upstairs, thinking maybe she'd stepped away for some quiet. That's when I heard it, her laugh. But it wasn't just any laugh. It was the one she used when she was completely at ease, the one that used to be just for me. I followed the sound down a hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. A door was slightly ajar, and I could see the edge of a couch through the gap. I stepped closer, my stomach tightening with every step. Peering inside, I froze. There she was, sitting on the couch, leaning close to another man. He was whispering something in her ear, and she was laughing softly, intimately. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, and the way she looked at him made my blood run cold. That wasn't a friendly conversation. That was something else entirely. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, my Chloe, was flirting with another man right in front of me. My hands clenched into fists, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Part of me wanted to burst into the room and demand answers, but another part of me was frozen in place, paralyzed by the betrayal unfolding before my eyes. After what felt like an eternity, they stood up. The man put his hand on her back, guiding her out of the room and down the hallway to another door. I followed, keeping my distance, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they'd hear it. When they disappeared into what I could only assume was a bedroom, something inside me snapped. I stormed down the hallway, pushed the door open without hesitation, and stepped inside. They both turned to look at me, their faces pale with shock. Chloe's mouth fell open, and for a moment, no one said a word. The tension in the room was suffocating, and then I spoke. The words that left my mouth were the last thing they expected, and the start of everything that came after. I stood there, barely able to keep my hands from shaking. Chloe's face was a mixture of shock and panic, while the man, tall, smug, and far too comfortable for someone caught red-handed, tried to mask his fear with a forced grin. The air in the room was thick, and the silence felt deafening. For a split second, I considered walking away, but no, not this time. "This is the surprise party you were so excited about, huh, Chloe?" I said, my voice calm but icy. I let my words linger in the air as I scanned the room, my eyes locking onto hers. She didn't say anything, just stood there like a deer caught in headlights. The man, let's call him David, finally found his voice. Look, buddy, I think there's been a misunderstanding. His tone was condescending, as if I were some clueless idiot who had stumbled into the wrong room. That grin of his, that smug, self-assured look, only fueled the fire burning in my chest. I turned to him slowly, taking a step closer. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Sure, let's clear it up. What exactly were you doing here with my wife in a bedroom with the door closed? Chloe finally snapped out of her stunned silence. Ethan, it's not what it looks like, she stammered, her voice shaky and unconvincing. We were just talking, that's all. Talking, I repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. In a bedroom, alone, with the door shut? Oh, please, Chloe, enlighten me. What kind of deep, intellectual conversation were you two having that required so much privacy? Her face turned red, whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. You're being ridiculous, she shot back, trying to regain control of the situation. You're overreacting as always. I could feel the pressure building in my chest, the weight of her lies crushing me. Overreacting? Was I supposed to just shrug this off like it was nothing? My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. If she wanted to play this game, fine, I was ready. Well, Chloe, I said, stepping back and gesturing toward David, why don't you introduce me to your friend, since I'm clearly the one out of line here? I'd love to know who this charming gentleman is. She hesitated, glancing at him nervously. He didn't look so confident anymore. His smug smile had disappeared, replaced by a look of unease. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he tried to figure out what to say. Finally, he extended a hand toward me. I'm David, he said, his voice lacking the bravado from earlier. I'm, a friend of Chloe's from work. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I stared at him, my eyes narrowing. A friend from work, huh? That's funny, because Chloe told me this party was for her college friends. So, David, which is it? Did you go to college together, or are you just another coworker she spends late nights with? The color drained from his face, and Chloe stepped in, her voice rising. Ethan, stop it. You're embarrassing me. Embarrassing you? I snapped, my calm facade cracking. You're standing here with another man in a bedroom at a party you dragged me to, and I'm embarrassing you? The door behind me creaked open, and I turned to see a small crowd gathering in the hallway. The raised voices must have drawn their attention. I could hear whispers and murmurs as they pieced together what was happening. The humiliation in Chloe's eyes was evident now, but it didn't stop her from doubling down. You're making this a bigger deal than it is, she said, her voice laced with venom. You always do this, Ethan. You can't handle anything without blowing it out of proportion. I laughed again, a hollow, bitter sound. Blowing it out of proportion, Chloe? Do you even hear yourself right now? You lie to me. You drag me to this sham of a party, and then you disappear with him. I jabbed a finger in David's direction. And I'm supposed to just pretend everything's fine? David, clearly uncomfortable with the growing audience, stepped forward. Look, man, I think we should all calm down. This doesn't need to turn into a scene. I turned to him sharply, my voice rising. A scene? Oh no, David. You don't get to walk into my marriage and tell me how to react. You think you can just sneak around with someone else's wife and then play the peacemaker when you get caught? The whispers in the hallway grew louder, and I could feel all eyes on us. Chloe looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor, but I wasn't finished. I turned back to her, my voice quieter now, but no less intense. Chloe, if this is what you want, fine. But don't you dare stand here and try to make me the villain. You've been lying to me for weeks, haven't you? All those late nights, the secret phone calls, the distance between us, it all makes sense now. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to stop her. Save it. I don't want to hear another excuse, another lie. You've said enough. With that, I stepped back, looking at the two of them one last time. Then I turned to the crowd gathered in the hallway and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, well, I hope you all enjoyed the show, because I'm done. And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving Chloe, David, and the stunned partygoers behind. But as I made my way out of the house, I knew this wasn't over. The storm had only just begun. I walked out of that house with my heart pounding, my head spinning, and my world crumbling beneath me. The cold night air hit me like a slap in the face, but but it did little to calm the storm raging inside me. I didn't look back, didn't care to see if Chloe followed or if anyone tried to stop me. I just kept walking, the sound of my own footsteps echoing in the stillness. When I got to my car, I paused for a moment, gripping the door handle so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to let out all the anger and betrayal that was threatening to consume me. But instead, I just got in, slammed the door, and sat there, staring blankly at the steering wheel. The image of Chloe and David together in that room was burned into my mind. Her laugh, her hand on his arm, the way she looked at him. It was all so deliberate, so intimate. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to my face, kissed me goodnight, and then turned around and done whatever this was? I let out a shaky breath and started the engine. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. The thought of Chloe coming out and trying to explain herself made my stomach turn. I needed space, time to think, to process everything. So I drove aimlessly, the dark streets blurring together as my mind raced. Memories flooded back, each one twisting the knife in my chest a little deeper. Our wedding day, her smile as we said our vows, the promises we made to each other. It all felt like a cruel joke now. How could she throw it all away so easily? How could she betray me like this? After what felt like hours, I found myself parked in front of a small diner on the edge of town. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a soft glow on the empty parking lot. It wasn't much, but it was quiet, and I needed quiet. I stepped inside and took a seat at the counter, ordering a coffee I didn't really want. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, poured me a cup and gave me a small, knowing smile. "Rough night?" she asked gently. I nodded, unable to find the words to explain the mess I just walked away from. "You could say that," I muttered, staring into the steaming cup in front of me. She didn't press me, just nodded and left me to my thoughts. For the first time that night, I felt a small sense of relief. Here, in this little diner, surrounded by the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint clatter of dishes, I could breathe. But even as I sat there, trying to find some semblance of calm, I knew this was just the beginning. The confrontation at the party had been bad, but it was nothing compared to what was coming. Chloe and I had years of history, a house, a life built together. Untangling all of that wouldn't be easy, and the thought of facing her again made my chest tighten. As I sipped my coffee, I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. There were already 3 missed calls from Chloe and a text that read, "We need to talk. Please come home." I set the phone down without responding, my jaw tightening. She wanted to talk now? After everything? No, she could wait. For once, I was going to do things on my terms. I didn't know what my next move was yet, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The sun crept over the horizon, casting a pale light on my windshield as I sat in my car outside the diner. I hadn't slept. My mind replayed the events of the night before over and over, each detail cutting deeper than the last. Chloe's betrayal, David's smug face, the whispers from the crowd. They all swirled in my head like a storm I couldn't escape. I glanced at my phone again. 7 missed calls and 4 texts from Chloe, each one more desperate than the last. "Ethan, please come home. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. Let me explain. You're overreacting. Please don't make this worse. Ethan, where are you? Come back." Overreacting? The word made my blood boil. How could she still be trying to shift the blame onto me? After everything I saw, she had the audacity to act like I was the problem. I slammed the phone onto the passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel to steady myself. I needed to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to drive back home and confront her, demand answers she couldn't lie her way out of. But another part of me, the part that had spent years being dismissed and belittled by her, knew it wouldn't change anything. Chloe was a master manipulator. She'd twist the truth, turn the tables, and somehow make me feel like the guilty one. I wasn't ready to face her yet. Instead, I drove to a nearby park, hoping the fresh air might help clear my head. The park was quiet, almost deserted, except for a few joggers and an older man walking his dog. I found a bench near the pond and sat down, staring at the rippling water as the weight of everything pressed down on me. I thought about the life Chloe and I had built together, the house, the memories, the plans for the future. How much of it had been real? Had she been lying to me this whole time, or was this something new? And David, how long had he been in the picture? The questions were endless. and the answers felt impossibly out of reach. I stayed at the park for hours, lost in my thoughts, until hunger finally drove me home. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Chloe's car parked outside. My chest tightened. She was waiting for me. The moment I walked through the door, I heard her voice. "Ethan, we need to talk." She was sitting on the couch, her hair disheveled and her eyes red, like she'd been crying. For a split second, I felt a pang of sympathy, but then I remembered why we were here, why she looked like this, and any trace of pity evaporated. "We've got nothing to talk about," I said coldly, walking past her toward the kitchen. "Ethan, please," she pleaded, standing up and following me. "Let me explain. It's not what you think." I spun around to face her, my anger finally boiling over. "Not what I think. I caught you, Chloe, in a bedroom with another man. So please enlighten me. What exactly am I supposed to think?" She flinched at my words, but quickly recovered, crossing her arms defensively. "You're blowing this out of proportion. David is just a friend." "Just a friend?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's funny, because friends don't sneak off to bedrooms at parties. Friends don't whisper in each other's ears and laugh like they're sharing some big secret. And they definitely don't look at each other the way you were looking at him." Her face turned red, and for a moment I thought she might apologize, but instead, she doubled down. "You don't understand. You've been so distant lately, Ethan. You barely pay attention to me anymore. What was I supposed to do?" Her words hit me like a slap. "You're blaming this on me?" I asked, my voice rising. "You're the one who lied, who snuck around, who humiliated me in front of a house full of strangers, and now it's my fault." "I'm not blaming you," she said, her tone softening. "I'm just saying things haven't been good between us. Maybe if you'd stop." I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Just stop. I don't want to hear it. You made your choices, Chloe, and now you have to live with them." She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. I headed upstairs to the guest room, slamming the door behind me. As I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty walls, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. This wasn't how I imagined my life would turn out, but one thing was clear: Chloe and I were done. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. This was just the beginning of the end. The guest room was cold and quiet, but it felt safer than being anywhere near Chloe. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, first smiling at me like nothing was wrong, and then laughing with David like I didn't exist. It was maddening. By morning, I had made up my mind. I couldn't keep living under the same roof with her, pretending everything was fine. This wasn't a temporary argument or a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, plain and simple, and I wasn't about to let her brush it under the rug. When I came downstairs, Chloe was already in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. She looked up when she heard me, her expression a mix of guilt and apprehension. "Morning," she said softly, like she was walking on eggshells. I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed a mug from the cabinet and poured myself some coffee, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. She finally broke it. "Ethan, can we please talk?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Talk about what, Chloe? How you lied to me. How you humiliated me in front of a room full of people. Or maybe about how you've been sneaking around with David." She flinched, but didn't back down. "I wasn't sneaking around," she insisted. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Because from where I'm standing, it sure looked like you were having a great time with him. So go ahead, Chloe, explain it to me. Tell me how I'm wrong." She hesitated, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. "It was a mistake," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't have let things get that far." I laughed bitterly. "A mistake? That's what you're calling it. You don't accidentally end up in a bedroom with another man, Chloe. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might actually take responsibility for what she'd done. But instead, she turned the blame back on me. "You don't understand how hard it's been," she said, her voice shaking. "You've been so distant, Ethan. Always working late, always tired. I felt invisible." "Invisible," I repeated, my anger flaring. "Chloe, I've been working my ass off to give us a good life, to pay for this house, this life we built together. And you felt invisible." Her tears spilled over, but I didn't feel sorry for her. not this time. She'd crossed a line, and no amount of excuses or crocodile tears was going to fix it. I can't do this, I said, setting my coffee cup down and turning toward the door. Ethan, wait, she called after me. Please don't walk away. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, talk to someone. I stopped and turned back to her, my voice cold and firm. I'm done talking, Chloe. There's nothing left to say. And with that, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving her standing there in the kitchen. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house another second. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the realization that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I loved, wasn't who she pretended to be. I drove aimlessly for hours, my thoughts racing. What was I supposed to do now? File for divorce? Move out? The thought of unraveling our entire life together was overwhelming, but staying with her wasn't an option, not after what she'd done. Eventually, I found myself at a lawyer's office. It wasn't planned. I just happened to notice the sign as I was driving by. Before I could talk myself out of it, I parked the car and walked inside. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile, but I must have looked as wrecked as I felt because her expression softened. How can I help you? She asked gently. I need to speak with someone about filing for divorce, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. She nodded and handed me a clipboard with some paperwork. As I sat in the waiting area, filling out the forms, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. This was it, the beginning of the end. When I finally sat down with the lawyer, she listened carefully as I explained the situation. She didn't interrupt or judge, just nodded and took notes. By the time I walked out of her office, I had a plan, a way to move forward, even if it felt like my world was falling apart. As I drove home, I braced myself for what was coming next. Chloe wasn't going to take this lying down, and I knew the road ahead would be messy. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had some control over my life again. This was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. By the time I returned home, the house felt colder than ever. I wasn't even sure why I came back. Maybe it was to gather my things, or maybe a part of me still wanted some clarity, some closure. But as I walked through the door, I knew this wasn't going to be simple. Chloe was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She looked up as soon as she heard the door close behind me. Her eyes were swollen and red, but I wasn't about to let her tears soften me. I'd spent too many years giving her the benefit of the doubt. Where have you been? She asked, her voice trembling. There was no anger, just desperation. I had things to take care of, I replied coldly, walking past her toward the stairs. What kind of things? She pressed, standing up and following me. Ethan, we need to talk about this. You can't just shut me out. I stopped halfway up the stairs and turned to face her. We don't need to talk about anything, Chloe. I've seen everything I need to see. I've heard enough of your excuses. Her face contorted with frustration. Excuses, Ethan? I'm trying to fix this. You're the one who's giving up. Giving up. I let out a bitter laugh. Chloe, you're the one who gave up the moment you decided to cheat on me. Don't you dare put this on me. She stepped back as if my words had physically struck her. For a moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then she shook her head, her voice rising. You don't understand, Ethan. You've been so distant, so wrapped up in your work. I felt like I didn't matter anymore. That's your excuse? I said, my voice dripping with disdain. Because I was working to give us a good life, you felt justified in throwing it all away? You think that makes it okay? Her hands balled into fists at her sides, and I could see her struggling to hold back her anger. You don't get it, she snapped. You weren't here, Ethan. You weren't present. I needed someone who saw me, who valued me. And you found that in David? I shot back. A guy who was more than happy to take advantage of your so-called loneliness? It wasn't like that, she yelled, tears streaming down her face now. I didn't plan for this to happen. It just stopped. I interrupted, my voice firm. I don't want to hear it. I've had enough of your lies, Chloe. You've been lying to me for weeks, maybe months, and now you're trying to play the victim? Her face twisted in anger. I'm not the only one to blame here, Ethan. You've been distant, cold. You don't even look at me the way you used to. What did you expect me to do? I expected you to be honest, I said, my voice calm but sharp. I expected you to talk to me if there was a problem. But instead, you chose to betray me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to stop her. No more, Chloe. I'm done. I went to a lawyer today. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, real fear flickered across her face. A lawyer, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I said, my tone cold and unwavering. I've already started the process. This marriage is over. She stared at me, her lips trembling. Ethan, no, please don't do this. We can fix it. I'll do whatever it takes. It's too late, I said, turning away from her and heading upstairs. You made your choice, Chloe. Now I'm making mine. As I packed a bag with some clothes and essentials, I could hear her sobbing downstairs. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. Not anymore. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I grabbed my bag and headed back down the stairs. Chloe was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She didn't look up as I walked past her to the door. Where are you going? She asked, her voice muffled by her tears. I'm staying somewhere else for now, I said without looking back. Don't contact me unless it's about the divorce. And with that, I walked out, letting the door close behind me. As I got into my car and drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, I was finally taking control of my life. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Chloe wasn't the type to let go easily, and I had a feeling things were about to get a lot messier. The next few days passed in a haze. I stayed at a small motel on the outskirts of town, trying to piece together the fragments of my life. Each night was sleepless, my mind racing with thoughts of Chloe and her betrayal. Even though I had taken the first steps toward leaving her, the weight of everything still sat heavily on my chest. I didn't just lose a wife. I lost the life I thought I knew. The morning of the fourth day, my phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand. I'd been ignoring Chloe's calls and texts, but the sheer volume of notifications made me grab the phone to see what she wanted this time. Her messages had gone from desperate to frantic. Ethan, please call me. I can't do this without you. You don't understand the full story. Please just listen. I love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. If you leave me, I don't know what I'll do. I threw the phone down, the knot in my stomach tightening. Her words no longer held any power over me. For years, Chloe had manipulated me, gaslighting me into thinking her problems were always somehow my fault. This time, I wasn't going to fall for it. But the messages didn't stop. That afternoon, she called again. This time, it was a voicemail. Against my better judgment, I listened to it. Ethan, I'm begging you to come home. I'm falling apart here. I made a mistake, and I know I hurt you, but you're my husband. We promised each other we'd get through anything. Please don't give up on us. I'll do anything you ask, just tell me what to do. Her voice cracked near the end, and I could hear her sobbing before the voicemail cut off. For a brief moment, a pang of guilt hit me. Was I being too harsh? Should I at least give her a chance to explain herself? No. I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. This wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about reclaiming my dignity. Chloe had crossed the line, and no amount of pleading could undo what she'd done. That evening, as I sat in the dimly lit motel room, there was a knock at the door. My heart sank. I had a bad feeling about who it might be. When I opened the door, there she was, Chloe. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Ethan, she said softly, her voice trembling. Can we please talk? I stood in the doorway, blocking her from coming inside. How did you even find me? I asked, my tone flat. You left a receipt on the kitchen counter, she admitted, looking down at the ground. I've been driving around, hoping I'd find you. I sighed, leaning against the door frame. Chloe, there's nothing to talk about. I've already made my decision. Please, Ethan, she said, stepping closer. I can't lose you. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll quit my job, cut off all contact with David, whatever it takes. Just don't leave me. I crossed my arms, staring at her with disbelief. Quit your job? Cut off David? Do you think that erases what you've done? Do you think I can just forget what I saw at that party? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. No, I don't expect you to forget. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you to give me a chance. Her words were desperate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just another act, a ploy to regain control. I'd seen this side of Chloe before, the way she could turn on the charm when things didn't go her way, and I wasn't falling for it this time. I need you to leave, I said firmly, stepping back and starting to close the door. Ethan, wait, she cried, putting her hand on the door to stop me. I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a freight train. I froze, the door half closed. as her declaration hung in the air. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her voice cracking. "I just found out a few days ago. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but I can't keep it from you. This changes everything, Ethan." I stared at her, my mind reeling. Was this another manipulation tactic, another lie to try and pull me back in, or was she telling the truth? My heart raced as 1,000 thoughts flooded my mind. If she was pregnant, whose child was it? Mine? David's? The mere thought made my stomach churn. "Prove it," I said coldly, narrowing my eyes at her. She blinked, taking a step back. "What? Prove it," I repeated. "If you're really pregnant, I want to see a test. And even then, I want a paternity test when the time comes. You don't get to drop a bombshell like this and expect me to just believe you." Her face crumbled, and she let out a small, broken sob. "You don't trust me at all, do you?" "No, Chloe," I said bluntly. "I don't. And you have no one to blame for that but yourself." She stood there for a moment, her shoulders shaking as she cried. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. As I closed the door, I leaned against it, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. Pregnant. Whether it was true or not, this was a game changer, and I had no idea what to do next. The door clicked shut behind me, and I slumped against it, my mind spinning. Pregnant. The word echoed in my head, stirring a storm of emotions I couldn't pin down. Anger, confusion, fear. Was Chloe telling the truth, or was this just another desperate attempt to manipulate me? And if she was pregnant, whose child was it? The motel room suddenly felt stifling. I paced back and forth, replaying her words over and over. Something didn't sit right. Chloe had always been calculating, knowing exactly how to twist a situation to her advantage. Was this just another one of her games? I didn't sleep that night, the weight of everything pressed down on me, suffocating and relentless. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for Chloe to spoon-feed me her version of the truth. I decided to call someone who might know more, David. As much as it disgusted me, he was the only other person involved in this mess, and I needed to hear his side. I scrolled through Chloe's phone records, which I had saved on a hunch a few months ago, and found his number. My hand shook as I dialed it. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. "Hello, David, it's Ethan," I said, my voice steady but cold. There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. "Ethan, look, man, I don't think we should. Save it." I cut him off. "Chloe told me she's pregnant. I want the truth, is it yours?" The line went silent, and I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. I don't know," he finally said. "She never said anything about being pregnant." "Do you even know how long this has been going on?" I asked, my voice rising. "How many times, David? How many times did you sneak around with my wife behind my back?" "Ethan, I swear it wasn't like that," he said quickly, his tone defensive. "It just happened. We didn't plan for this, and I never meant for it to go this far." I let out a bitter laugh. "It just happened? That's the best you've got? You didn't mean for it to go this far? You expect me to believe you're some innocent bystander?" "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what else to say." "You can start by staying out of my life," I said, my voice cold. "And if this baby turns out to be yours, you'd better be ready to take responsibility." I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling with rage. His weak apologies and empty excuses did nothing to ease the fire burning inside me. If anything, they made it worse. But now I had another problem. Chloe. If she was lying about the pregnancy, it was the final straw. If she wasn't, I had to know whose child it was. Either way, I couldn't let her control the narrative any longer. I drove back to the house that evening, determined to confront her. When I walked in, Chloe was sitting on the couch, looking more composed than the night before. She stood up as soon as she saw me, her face lighting up with a mixture of hope and desperation. "Ethan," she said, taking a step toward me. "I'm so glad you came back." "Stop," I said sharply, holding up a hand. "We're not doing this. I'm not here to play games, Chloe. I'm here for the truth." She froze, her face falling. "What do you mean?" "I called David," I said bluntly. "He doesn't know anything about this pregnancy. So I'm asking you again. Are you really pregnant, or is this just another one of your lies?" Her lips parted, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. But then her shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. "I am," she said quietly. "I took a test. It's positive. Show me. I demanded, my eyes locked onto hers. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine, it's upstairs. I followed her up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. When we reached the bathroom, she opened the cabinet and pulled out a small plastic test, holding it out to me. The two faint lines stared back at me, confirming her claim. Happy now? She said bitterly, crossing her arms. No, I replied, my voice flat. Because this doesn't prove it's mine. Her eyes widened, and her face turned pale. Ethan, it is. I swear it is. You'll forgive me if I don't take your word for it, I said, stepping back. We'll be doing a paternity test as soon as it's possible. Until then, I don't want to hear another word about this baby. Tears filled her eyes again, but I didn't care. I couldn't care, not anymore. She had broken something in me that could never be fixed. Ethan, please, she whispered. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her, my heart heavy with the weight of everything she had done. You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough? I said quietly. And no amount of begging is going to change that. With that, I turned and walked out of the house, leaving her standing there with the positive test still in her hand. As I got into my car and drove away, I felt a strange sense of closure. The truth was out, and while it wasn't what I wanted to hear, at least I knew where I stood. But something told me this wasn't the end. Chloe wasn't going to give up easily, and I had a feeling the worst was yet to come. The drive away from the house felt different this time. It wasn't the rush of anger or betrayal that fueled me. It was clarity. I was done. Done with Chloe's lies, her manipulations, and the emotional chaos she dragged me into. The marriage was over, and there was no turning back. The next morning, I met with the lawyer again. We discussed the steps to finalize the divorce and how to protect myself in case Chloe tried to complicate things. I also made arrangements for a paternity test as soon as it was medically possible. If the child wasn't mine, it would only solidify my resolve to cut ties completely. 2 weeks passed, and I avoided Chloe's calls and messages. I stayed at the motel, focusing on rebuilding my life one small step at a time. It wasn't easy, but every day away from her felt like regaining a piece of myself. The fog of confusion and hurt was lifting, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. Finally, the day of the paternity test arrived. Chloe met me at the clinic, looking tired and disheveled. She tried to make small talk, but I kept my responses short and professional. This wasn't about us anymore. It was about the truth. The wait for the results was excruciating, but when they finally came in, the answer was clear. The child wasn't mine. When I saw the report, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with bitterness. It wasn't my child. All her pleas, her promises, her desperate attempts to reel me back in, they were all for nothing. She had destroyed our marriage for someone else, and now she would have to live with the consequences. I handed Chloe the report when we met again. She read it, her face crumpling as she realized the full weight of what she had done. Ethan, I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know. I didn't mean for this to happen. I nodded slowly, my voice calm. I believe you didn't mean for this to happen, Chloe, but it did. And now it's time for us both to move on. She tried to protest, to beg for one more chance, but I didn't let her. I stood firm, knowing that this was the only way to truly close this chapter of my life. I wished her well, genuinely, and walked away for the last time. In the months that followed, I started over. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I found a new place to live, focused on my career, and even started reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. As for Chloe, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had the baby and that David was nowhere to be found. She tried to reach out a few more times, but I didn't respond. She was a chapter that had closed, and I wasn't about to reopen it. Looking back, the betrayal was devastating, but it also set me free. Free to rebuild, to rediscover myself, and to create a life on my own terms. Sometimes the hardest endings lead to the best beginnings, and for me, this was just the start.